This is ABC 13 Community Close-Up. Viva Houston.
Good morning and welcome to Viva Houston. I'm Eric Barajas. Bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community is no easy task. Recent confrontations between officers and young men of color have made headlines and strained some relationships. There are no easy solutions to the problem, but Precinct 1 Constable Alan Rosen has made it his mission to strengthen relationships with the citizens in Precinct 1. He's our guest today on Viva Houston. Welcome, Constable Rosen.
Thank you, Eric.
We'll get to some of the other stuff in a minute, but first, you know, you campaigned in 2012, the summer there.
Yes.
You've been in office a little over a year and a half now.
2 years.
Right at 2 years.
Yes.
How do you think things are going? I know a lot of people might remember that you took over for Jack Abercia. He was indicted on federal charges involving bribery. One of the things you stumped on was ethical cleansing of the office. What do you think you are 2 years into the office now?
I think we've done an exceptional job, without tooting our own horns too loudly, of really revamping the office. One of the first things I did was make sure that everybody took an ethics class to include all the command staff, including me, and made sure that everybody understands how important ethics is in law enforcement. You know, the greatest thing that we have in law enforcement is our ability to connect with the community, and the community has to trust us.
Yeah.
And if they don't trust us, we have real problems. So I did ethics training. I keep a law enforcement ethics I've had blown up and put in our training room, so there's always that constant reminder of our duty and our oath.
So that was changing the culture within the department, something you definitely had to address. You also had to address the public perception of the office, given everything that had happened. How do you think that's gone so far?
I think it's done great. I think that we have come out and really are a far more responsive law enforcement agency. We take really a community service approach to law enforcement, where we're the service providers and the community is our customers. And so we very much have that hands-on approach of really talking to the community and letting them get to know the services we provide and ensuring that we elevate the entire game there.
Public outreach and letting the community know who you guys are is another big part of what you've tried to implement there. Kind of looking at some of the national headlines we've seen over the past maybe 6 months. Various shootings happening in different parts of the country involving law enforcement and just anybody. Of course, some headlines made an issue of color possibly being an issue there. But how do you think all that factors in when the community has to interact with law enforcement?
I think what's important is to ensure that the public and the law enforcement agency have a good working relationship. And it starts by returning to some of the basics. Community-oriented policing model works. It works, but really hadn't been used in a while.
Community-oriented.
Community-oriented. Well, I'll tell you, our deputies that patrol the contracts which we serve often know the person's dog, the children. They know what time the parents work, when they're home and when they're not home. They stop and they know the community in which they serve. And so what I think is most important, a way for us to connect is through youth conferences and having a discourse that's going on, a constant discourse. It can't just come up when there's a problem. It has to be kind of constant communication with the community. And so going back to the community-oriented policing model, I think that once we do that, and really get back into the trenches of walking the streets and talking to our neighbors and talking to our youth especially, I think that the relationship between law enforcement and the community will greatly improve. Talking
to youth, something you guys already have on the calendar, literally coming up here in April. You've got what you're calling somewhat of a teen summit planned for April.
Yes.
What do you hope to accomplish with this?
I want this to be a summit in which youth can come talk to law enforcement. One of the things we're going to do is teach youth what to do when they encounter law enforcement. So if you're and it's night, what you need to do, turn on your light inside the car, keep your hands on the steering wheel. You know, kind of if you're going to reach for your glove box, tell the officer, hey, you asked for my insurance, I'm going to go to the glove box to get it. That's where the insurance card is. And that should greatly enhance the interaction between youth and law enforcement. So we're going to educate. We're going to hear stories that they may have of encounters they've had that have been either negative or positive. And I intend to get the group that has had a negative interaction with law enforcement and place them with a police officer. so that those youth can really, really interface and get to know a police officer in a much different way than on the street.
You're definitely telling the youth what to do when they interact with a law enforcement officer. As part of the dialogue also going to be what youth can expect from an officer when they come into contact with one?
Absolutely. And that's probably the most important thing. I think if we start educating our youth about how to encounter law enforcement better, that the encounter will be better from the youth perspective and from the officer's perspective. I also would like to propose, we're right in the middle of the legislative session right now, of maybe allowing this to be a class that's taken, a class that's taken in high school for credit. Okay. And it's kind of law enforcement in our youth and ways that we can improve that. And it really may lead to a lot of our youth turning to the career of law enforcement, which we could greatly use too.
All right, Constable Rosen of Precinct 1, 2 years into the job. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, it's an event being put on to help